And right. Okay, so the weather's really bad today. It's actively raining, but because I've got so much tree cover, I thought it would be reasonably safe to do this. Whoop. So yeah, day 7 of week 13. I think I've more or less decided to go back and repeat. I think it's week 11 of the army fitness thing, purely because I've been so distracted, but that's life for you. Everybody has times when they, so I've skipped yet another week. I didn't skip it, I did the runs, but I need to fully tidy up before I've got a space to exercise in. Oh, it's really rainy. So yeah, so I've had the 3D printer for coming up to 48 hours, given that it arrived at about 2:30 on Friday, and it's about 9:30 right now in the morning on Sunday. Thought I'd share a few thoughts. So it has to be said, I kind of got lucky on my choice of 3D printer to start with. I'm glad I went for ready assembled, because the CTC Bizer and its clones, it's a dual extruder printer, as you've seen on the previous video on Friday, and yeah, it just seems to do it. I haven't really tried any sort of super fine detail prints, but from what I have seen, it's capable from printing like a really good STL, a really good file. The only downside is that it doesn't put out standard G-code files, or it doesn't print from standard G-code files. So I don't know. I don't know whether that's a thing that would be sorted by having the printer directly connected to a computer, because all I've been using at the moment is the SD card option. It's actually got an old-fashioned large-scale SD card rather than micro SD, which to my mind is slightly better, because SD cards are a lot more robust. And look, it's been raining all night. I'd rather not get the camera wet, but we'll see. We shall press on, and I can already hear the river if you can't. Yeah. So it doesn't use standard G-code, which made using Cura a little tricky, because Cura won't output 3GX. And Cura is the main software that people use. So I did find a matter manipulator piece of software. Okay, so we're not going down into the darker end of the woods because of that. Look at that. That's an angry river right there. Yeah, it's just... well, I don't know where all those baby trout are going to end up. Because where that big rock is, that's kind of where they were. So I wonder how many fish are being swept down the river. But I guess that's a kind of semi-natural phenomenon. I mean, it's like whitewater rafting. There's so much silt in the river. I'm not even going down there where I normally walk along the little path. The little sandy path has been kind of obliterated by the river this morning. So yeah, heavy duty. This is why it's fun to come out into a piece of woodland that's got a lot of different terrain. Often, especially if your weather changes. So it will be very cool once people start sending in a lot more footage of where they are. It'll be kind of fun to see Australia in the snow. So yeah. So there is that hiccup with it, this idea that you've got a specific file type that the Bizer uses. Aside from that, you know, the biggie was it was cheap and ready built. So 140 quid. It came with about a third of a spool of filament, which is nice. Fortunately, I already had some filament because I wanted to print some stuff in grey. But yeah, I might have a go at printing in red and have it print on the other extruder. So yes. I'm just going to go for a little patrol along a similar route. The Himalayan mountain balm is obviously liking the weather. It's now over my head, which it wasn't a few days ago. Damn, it grows fast. So yeah, so that's really, the file type is the only hiccup I've found so far. It might not be the most precise 3D printer ever made, but for dipping your toe in and not having a giant amount of hassle, I'm just kind of interested to maybe run a workshop and demystify it a bit, maybe, because it truly does annoy me that there's been loads of people saying, oh, 3D printing, it's very complicated, you must be ingenious to even attempt it, and then we'll, you know, spoon feed you tiny bits of information. It's like, it's not really how I learn stuff. I mean, as I speak, it's printing the second half of the spool holder to hold the big kilo spools of filament. It's about 3/4 of the way through printing the whole project, and I'm curious to see how a multi-part print comes together. I've printed it at super low quality because it doesn't have to be pretty. You know, it really doesn't have to be the most attractive spool holder in the world. It just has to hold up the spool. So you can do lots of things with 3D printing, because obviously you don't want to print out solid plastic parts all the time. So it's kind of capable of looking at the outside of an object, deciding whether it's an enclosed structure, say like imagine printing a solid Lego block. Now that wouldn't be too efficient, and eventually anything you built out of that kind of filament would be really heavy. And I wonder if that would be economically viable to print Lego blocks in ABS instead of buying them. That would be an interesting discussion point. So yeah, so you can select the level of infill as a percentage. You know, obviously 100% infill will be a solid object, 0% will be entirely hollow. And it's really quite fascinating to run off parts for this thing. So yesterday I printed out a little filament guide that clips onto the main power cable, so it guides the filament onto the print head. But once I've got the spool holder, I won't have to worry so much about the spool jamming up or tipping over or anything like that. It will just feed directly down into the printer from the top of the printer, which is what I wanted to do. And because this is rather wonderfully a dual head printer, one of the best things about it is that you can have two spools of filament, you can have two completely different materials. So I'm sort of wondering whether you know, how easy it is to print with two different colours. I've currently got grey and red, and that's kind of cool. But I wonder whether you could print ABS onto PLA. You know, can you create hybrid prints that contain two materials? So yeah, there's a lot of exploration to be done. There's a lot of things I would like to print already. There's a lot of camera parts and stuff like that. There's a lot of little mounts and things I'd like to design. I mean, I'd like to design a purpose mount for the audio recorder that I use. That will be interesting with a, because you can, things that you need to bolt together and you want a secure fit on a standard metal bolt, you can actually glue in little threaded inserts to give some strength to the bolt fitting so it doesn't just snap off. But I would like the audio recorder to come some way down the gimbal, which it doesn't at the moment. Create like a Z-shaped bracket to actually put it further down so it doesn't interrupt the movement of the camera, which would be nice. Maybe a few little clip-on cable guides for the various arms of the gimbal, so that I can guide a cable so it doesn't restrict the movement, which the cable that handles the audio on this occasionally does. But I'm still pretty excited. I still can't quite believe that I own, a piece of science fiction tech. I also had a funny thought last night. I'm glad I remembered. In that there's a couple of humorous things I'd like to print. I'd like to print like some kind of maker badge, something like that. And the ironic thing is how would you be able to sell a maker badge? The only way you can have a maker badge is, Jedi lightsaber style. You've got to make it yourself. So if you had any printouts that said maker, the only person that could really wear them with any sense of pride is someone that had actually made the maker badge. But I'm still very struck by the fact that the 3D printer itself is such a simple, electronically speaking, a very simple piece of equipment. So there really isn't a whole lot to it, in that, it's just literally 3 axes of movement with an extruder and then a control board to interpret the print file. Like all the super complicated stuff is done at your computer's end, and then the printer just goes ahead and follows the instructions for each layer. And when you compile and save the 3GX file, or 3XG file, or X3G, I think it's X3G, when you save that file, you're in a, it basically calculates what each layer will look like very, very fast, and then gives the printer the coordinates of where to lay down filament and how fast to feed that filament and how thick it should be. So yes, there doesn't seem to be much of an industry standard as far as I can tell, apart from maybe putting out a direct G code, but that's the one that the Prusa or ANET A8 or Prusa Mark III, that's the kind of one that those print. And we're starting to get into the territory where these things are going to be purchasable. And I know it's an open, moving set of parts, and there are some hot bits in there, and things to trap little fingers. So you would possibly need to make an enclosure. But yeah, let's turn this around and put this down. Yeah. So, it's kind of interesting still, but 140, 150 quid for a printer that you can demonstrably get up and running real quick and get your first print out within an hour, or at least get your first print started within an hour. And the first thing I printed was the little cat, because I wanted to know what sort of file type it was, because I would put STL files on rather foolishly, or G-code files into the printer, and it wasn't reading them because it's only looking for the X3G files. So that's pretty cool. So I figured that out pretty quick. I haven't even referred to the manual yet, so that should tell you something about how easy to use it is. I mean, it's so easy to use, I'm seriously thinking about going to the Manchester Girl Geeks thing to their bar camp this year, and just taking the 3D printer and a laptop and just saying, right, whoever wants to come and tinker with this and print something off, as long as the print doesn't take hours and hours and hours, then come and learn how to build a 3D printer, and maybe design a little badge that said I 3D printed this. Because I think the mystery and the implied learning curve is absolute crap when you look at some of the machines that are out there. And I really do think I've found my X230 of printers. It might not be the fastest or the best or the most detailed printer, but it sure is, once you understand like 15 seconds worth of information, as with a lot of these things, once you've grokked that and the process of preparing the file, printing is nothing. You know, it's really easy. And I really like the idea of sort of going, right, no, let's demystify this shit. So yeah, it's so totally worth it, you know. And if I found one that was cheap enough, I would definitely buy another one of exactly the same. Because it's just too useful. I mean, I've got loads of things that I want to do with it, and I'm really planning on breaking out one of my Raspberry Pis and installing Octopi, fitting that Raspberry Pi with a camera, and just leaving it set up. Just permanently set up to record all the videos of the 3D prints. Because Octopi will run the printer software, and it'll also make time-lapse videos automatically for you of every 3D print that you can then access via the internet. So yeah. So yeah, it is the beginning of an adventure. And all it is now a question of improving the quality of the prints, understanding the settings a bit more, and just generally experimenting with it. So I'm going to get out of the rain like any sensible human, and yeah, I think I'll leave it there. But yeah, so definitely this combination of the Beise CTC printer and matter manipulator, it's a very good combo. And then you add in Thingiverse, which is where I got the pattern for my spool holder that's printing right now, probably even finished right now. Then yeah, I think it's a dynamite duo. Right, so thanks for watching, and do take care.